Good evening. Tonight's Committee of Adjustment hearing is being held by video conference and live stream video on the town's live stream webpage at oakville.ca. This is a hearing to consider applications for minor variance and consents held under the authority of the Planning Act. Please keep in mind that the intent of this process is to review the application that is before the committee, listen to the evidence, and then make a decision. This process is not intended to be used to resolve any concerns or disputes that may exist between the town, individuals, organizations. If a request for a deferral is made and the committee grants such a request, the applicant or authorized agent must contact the Secretary Treasurer to schedule a new hearing date. In order to conduct an effective and efficient electronic hearing, we have adopted the following process. If you are watching the live stream of this hearing at oakville.ca and you wish to speak to an item of the agenda, you can call 905-815-6095. Again, the number is 905-815-6095. The number is also posted at the live stream page at oakville.ca. Staff will be standing by to take your call. And when you do call in, staff will ask for your name and number and item that you wish to address. And further instructions will be provided for you to call back and join the video conference. When the chair of the committee polls for interested parties, you will have to press *6 to unmute yourself. The applicant or agent will then be given the opportunity to briefly explain to the committee the basis of the application, answer any questions that may arise. A maximum of 5 minutes will be provided for each presentation. You will also have to state your name and address for the record, and submissions beyond the 5 minutes will be at the discretion of the committee. All delegations must state their name and address for the record, and a maximum of 5 minutes will be provided for each presentation. All remarks and questions will be directed to the chair, and any submissions beyond 5 minutes will be at the discretion of the committee. The applicant or agent will then be provided with a further 5 minutes to respond to comments made by interested parties and answer questions from the committee members. If the applicant or agent has any concerns found in staff report, particularly with any proposed conditions, this will be the opportunity to advise us. The matter will then be taken into committee for a decision, and this will mark the end of all discussions. Any person desiring a notice of the decision for an application must provide a written request, preferably through email, to the Secretary Treasurer. Written notice of the committee's decision will be mailed no longer than 30 days for minor variances and 15 days for consent applications to the applicant, agent, and any other person who has filed a written request for such notice. The last day of appeal of the decision to the Ontario Land Tribunal will be noted on the decision. Only the applicant, specified persons, and public bodies may appeal the decision of the committee before the Ontario Land Tribunal. In November of 2022, Bill 23 legislation, the More Homes Built Faster Act, amended the Planning Act to remove any appeal rights for members of the public. If no appeal is received within the prescribed timeframe, the decision of the committee becomes final and binding, and the Secretary Treasurer will then notify the applicant and anyone who has received a copy of the decision through written correspondence. People participating in this hearing are to be courteous to and respectful of the members of the committee, town staff, and any other person who has participated in this electronic hearing. Tonight's electronic hearing is being video recorded and available for future viewing at oakville.ca. Thank you. We have one regret this evening, Ms. Lindsay Yu. I have declarations of any pecuniary interests. Mr. Hardcastle, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to identify a conflict with respect to CAVA 121 of 2024, 2515 Royal Windsor Drive. My employer is the approval authority with respect to access provisions on Winston Churchill under a boundary agreement with the region of Halton. So I'll declare a conflict.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Hardcastle. Anyone else? I see none. Madam Secretary Treasurer, do we have anyone interested in asking for withdrawal? Anyone in the audience who is interested in asking for withdrawal of an application or deferral of application? Please raise your hand and the Secretary Treasurer will allow you to speak.
Madam Chair, I don't see any hands up. I do have a request.
Okay.
I do have a request for one of the files, one of the applications on the agenda for tonight, just based on insufficient public notice.
Oh, which one is that?
That's file CAV A1212024. It's 2515 Royal Windsor Drive. There was insufficient public notice provided. It's actually inner map as 2 parcels of land, and the north parcel was missed when completing the notification mail-out, so the notification area needs to be expanded. The applicant is aware of this. I have spoken with him, and I was just going to request if the deferral fee could be waived as well.
The application, the deferral fee would be waived based on whose
based
mistake?
On our error, our mapping
Or
error.
your error?
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. Committee members, all
Madam
those
Chair?
in, yes.
Madam Chair, should I not be removed from the meeting with respect to this? This is the matter in which I identified a conflict.
Oh, I apologize, Mr. Hardcastle. Yeah, they're requesting a deferral. Madam Secretary, you can remove Mr. Hardcastle, but I mean, it's
Sure,
it's fine until we actually vote on the deferral.
Sorry, Madam Chair, do you want me to remove him?
Yes, please. Just until we vote on the deferral.
Okay, he's been removed.
Okay, very well. Committee members, there is insufficient public notice and we are waiving. Sorry, is someone speaking? I thought I heard something. The matter is CAV 121 of 2024 at 2515 Royal Windsor Drive. It's requested by the Secretary Treasurer for insufficient notice. The applicant is aware and we are waiving the deferral fee. All those in support of a deferral? Okay, the application has been deferred. Thank you, Madam Secretary Treasurer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll bring Mr. Hardcastle back in.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who's requesting a deferral or a withdrawal of the application? Okay. Then we'll move on to our first item of our agenda, and that is CAV 117 of 2024 at 93 2nd Street. Again, that's CAV 117 of 2024 at 93 2nd Street. I do note that there are 2 letters of support from Jazz and Shelley Barr and Nicole and Lormier and John Domsey. I have Alex Temporal as the agent. Is that correct?
That's correct. Just moving him in, Madam Chair.
Okay.
Madam Chair?
Yeah, yes, go ahead, Mr. Temporal. Do you have, is it possible to turn your camera on?
There. Next slide, please. We are here for two minor variances. One for the side yard on this property, 93 Second Street, and one for the rear setback at the same property. Enclosed are the two site plans, the existing survey of the original house and the proposed site plan. Basically demonstrating that the original house had variances was not located in such a way at the easterly border or easterly side yard and the rear yard that it didn't currently comply with the existing setbacks. And basically the work that we're doing, the existing house largely maintains the footprint of the existing house. And the first, next slide, if I can go to it, is an overlay basically showing the proposed redevelopment of the house or renovations to the house in addition, and how it relates to the footprint of the existing house. On the ground floor plan of the existing house, there was an existing carport that was partially enclosed. It was located at 0.68 meters away from the property line when it should be at 1.2. We are changing the enclosed carport to a formal garage and using the same setback at 0.68. Similarly, on the second floor, there is a addition of a second bedroom. It is enclosing partially the existing stairway that is shown on the ground floor plan on the sort of right-hand side of the existing family room or living room, and that's being enclosed, and it is at 4.23 meters away from the property line when it should be at 7.5. However, that access is important to the basement for the house and has been incorporated as part of the second floor addition and ground floor. So the intent of the house is to largely maintain its footprint, removing sheds and so forth that have been added over time, and consolidating the house, which was built in 3 to 4 different additions. I can have the next slide. You can see that the garage replaces the existing carport that's on the left-hand side of the house or on the easterly side of the house. And the second story is shown in the background, which the roof of the garage slides up to. The existing shed that's at the front of the house is replaced by a new entry. Next slide. This is where the other setback, one of the setbacks is involved. Where the wooded pile is shown on the existing south elevation is where the staircase is to the basement. And on the right-hand side, the proposed elevation, you'll see a largely glazed addition that incorporates that staircase and links the roofs together, so maintaining the existing roof line. Next slide. This is where the elevation affects the neighbor to the side yard. The existing, you can see in pieces, is the existing enclosed carport with steps down into it. So there's a gap between the existing house and the carport. The new garage encloses the steps to get into the house, and the second floor addition maintains the slope along the front of along the side of the house, so that it's compatible with the existing. And then the next slide is the side of the house where we're maintaining basically the current appearance, using the Tudor boarding and stucco that is a characteristic of the existing house. Next slide. And lastly, this is the perspective showing the house as proposed, utilizing the Tudor style that was part of the original design of the house, or the second design of the house, and incorporating the new garage with a slate overhang to protect the doors and to shelter the entrance into the garage, and shows the new vestibule entrance to the house. So that is, in summary, I think we've had a preliminary meeting with the Heritage Committee, who seem to be generally in support. We're having a more formal meeting with them on the 17th of September. We've met with the next door neighbors, and you have copies of their letters of support. We're basically pulling together a house and poorly maintained over a number of years, and then built up over several additions into a solid family home, and maintaining the character that was established by the previous owner in this Tudor design. So I think we both are maintaining the character of the area and the compliance with the Heritage District and the intent of the zoning bylaw. Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Temporal. Are there any questions or items of clarification of the applicant at this time? I see none. Has anyone called with interest for this application, Madam Secretary Treasurer?
No, Madam Chair, there have been no calls.
Very well. If there are no calls or items of clarification or questions, we can take the matter into committee. Who would like to move a motion? Go ahead, Mr. Hardcastle.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Having undertaken my site visit and having reviewed the materials, including the written staff report, and having heard the presentation from the agent, I'm satisfied that the requested variances conform to the 4 tests of the Act. I'll put forward a motion of approval, finding that the variances conform to 4 tests. The motion would be subject to 2 conditions, those being that the dwelling be constructed in general accordance with the submitted site plan and elevation drawings and the approved heritage permit, and that the approval will expire within 2 years of the date of the decision if a building permit has not been issued.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hardcastle. Is there a discussion on this recommendation? I see none. All those in support? Okay, the application has been approved, none opposed. Thank you, Mr. Temporal. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Application CAV 118 of 2024 at 269 Forest Wood Drive. Again, that's CAV A118 of 2024 at 269 Forest Wood Drive. If anyone is interested in this application, please call 905-815-6095, and staff will be standing by to take your call and provide you with further instructions to join the video conference. Mr. Randall, go ahead. You are the agent for this application.
Thank you very much. Okay, I'm Kieran Randall. I'm the architect for this project. I'm representing the ownership of 269 Forestwood Drive. If we could please show, instead of the drawings that we have in front of us, the received comments, page 3, that would be better. For some reason, the floor plans were omitted, or actually we just went by them, so it doesn't matter. If we just go to the floor plan, sorry, the second floor plan that you just skipped. One further up. Okay, this is it. So In this case, the request is extremely minor. The house has a double height when one enters, and the client wants to make some interior renovations and not exterior. And one of the interior renovations that has been sought is to take advantage of this double height that's right over the entry. So what we have in front of us here in the screen is the second story, and you can see that it's all grayed out except for this white area where we're proposing a laundry. That laundry is essentially in an infilled area that is over the entry. If we go up one slide to level 1, you'll be able to see that it coincides with the entry level, right? That's the double height over the front door. So long story short, this application does not affect the exterior at all. It's an interior renovation. And as we are infilling a double height, the zoning examiner has interpreted that this constitutes a increase in residential floor area, consequently as well increases the residential floor area ratio, which pushes it from 32% to 33.5%. So it's up only 1.5%. The allowed is 29%. So in short, we're only increasing the residential floor area ratio by 1.5%. As mentioned, it's not perceivable from the exterior of the building. The neighborhood is a neighborhood of sizable homes. If the home is adequately sized for this neighborhood and this infill, we think, I'm confident, is not out of character for this neighborhood. The infill is only 56.4 square feet, so extremely minor. So it's a very short presentation because the request is very minor and very in just one. So to conclude, I want to basically insist that this is a very minor variance. I do believe it's in line with the zoning bylaw intent and in line with the neighborhood's character. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Randall. Are there any questions or items of clarification of the applicant at this time? Okay, I see none. Has anyone called with interest for this application, Madam Secretary Treasurer?
Madam Chair, there has been no interest.
Very well, thank you. If there are no questions or items of clarification, we can take the matter into committee. Who would like to move a motion? Go ahead, Mr. Talowski.
Madam Chair, I'm going to move that this application be approved as applied for, finding that it meets the 4 tests of the Planning Act. I would note that this is a very small variance that's all internal, and as such, I don't believe it will have any impact. I'd also note that there's no opposition from the community. I'd make that approval subject to the laundry room being constructed in general accordance with the floor plans and elevations dated June 24th, 2024, and that the approval expires in 2 years if the building permit has not been issued.
Very well. Thank you, Mr. Talowski. Is there a discussion on this recommendation? I see none. All those in support? Okay, the application has been approved, none opposed. Thank you, Mr. Randall.
Thank you.
Okay, the next application on the agenda this evening is CAV 119 of 2024 at 401 Wedgwood Drive. Again, that's CAV 119 of 2024 at 401 Wedgwood Drive. I will note that we have 4 letters of objection from a Jacqueline and Douglas Wade and Adrian Holbich, Susan Hyatt Dorio, and a Peter Diorio, sorry, Joe Conte and Sandra Thwaitis. And we have Mr. Castillo as our agent for this addition, accessory building cabana. Go ahead.
Good evening, members of the committee, Madam Chair. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, thank you.
Yes. I'm from Keystone Home Designs. I'm the designer and I'm representing the homeowner for 401 Wedgwood Drive. We're here today going back to committee for lot coverage. Back in 2023, we had we asked for a lot coverage for the maximum lot coverage is 25%, and we went for 28.28%. This included at the time a small cabana. As you can see on the screen, you have on the left side, we had a small, I think it was like a 3.3 by 3.7 cabana at the back. As the homeowner, he started to do the construction of this house, he realized that, you know, the cabana that we had was completely enclosed, did not really meet the requirements of a few other needs that he wanted to have. So we started playing with the design a little bit and came out with a instead of a 4-wall like covered cabana, we decided to have like an open concept, just one flat roof with one wall at the back. And therefore we needed a bit more space. So we did the new design. We decided to go ahead and do the drawings and the structural drawings mainly because it needed some steel and had some issues with the engineer. It took some time. Unfortunately, the client, he had his framer from overseas. He was going to retire and go back to Europe. And while we were waiting for drawings, he just asked him to continue with at least just the framing before we go back to the city. So that's why he started construction ahead of time. So we just wanted to make clear of that. If this is my presentation, if Jen can scroll down to, I guess, to the next page, we can explain. So you can see the top picture was the original cabana. This was a preliminary render when we had the cabana on the side, but at the end we put it at the back. So you can see it was like a small little house with a sloped roof. And then what we did, we changed it to, again, like I said, like an open cabana with no walls, just at the back, a bit, you know, larger. And that's where we're going back to the committee. The original cabana, we actually increased it by about 28 square meters. And again, the reason we went with a flat roof with a bit slope is to avoid, you know, the neighbors seeing too much of it. And what we did, we added a lot of new trees and cedars. We had the homeowner actually went above and beyond. He got these cedars. Normally you get them for 4 to 6 feet in height. You get them from British Columbia. They're about 10 to 12 feet. They're gonna grow up to 9 meters. Within a year, you won't see even the house in there. So and he put about 50 of them, like really expensive trees. Again, he's doing this cabana and everything mainly to get his own privacy to his backyard. So this is helping the neighbor in the back and everybody else with these cedars that he's planting. You can scroll to the next pages. But the main thing is that he wanted to have some privacy to his own backyard. And that's the whole reason that he's doing this, right? So I know that there's letters of, you know, that says the contrary, but as you go along with these pictures, there's a few pictures from the back, from the house at the back. If you can scroll down one more. Well, this is the existing construction, the framing construction. As you can see the cedars are pretty much at the height, almost at the back of the roof of this structure. If you keep scrolling down, this is just a little sectional drawing of the cabana showing how it's like an open concept. You can keep going down. One more. So as you can see here, the pool is right in front of the cabana. So this is these trees, these pictures were taken a while ago, but the trees and the cabana are covering and giving the privacy to the client with his little kids. You know, it's giving the privacy to everybody. And if you scroll down one more, you can have the view from, sorry, one more, from the back house, which is 1452 Durham. You can see the picture on the top was taken from one of the letters that they sent yesterday. This is taken clearly from, at least from the second floor. And you can see the cabana just covering the pool view, right? You can see the existing trees from Durham and the cedars that we planted, they're gonna grow within a year. This is gonna be covered. And then you have on the bottom picture, you have the view from 452 at ground level. So you can hardly see the cabana. Right now you can see it because it's wood, so it's light. When they finish, it's gonna have the same metal, black metal as the new house. So it's gonna blend with it's gonna camouflage basically, and it's gonna have some wood siding on it. If you keep scrolling down, we had a little drone, pretty bad quality, but we tried to bring it from that house a little bit up so you can see what you're seeing at from the neighbor. And if you go to the last one, I think it's the last one. No, one more, I think. We had some letters, 3 letters of support from, you know, for what is it? 405 Wedgwood, 1435 Devon from the side. And we actually have a letter of support from 1452, which is, funny enough, the same letter or same neighbors that now are together. They went, in my understanding, they went ahead and talked with all the neighbors from Durham, 1454, 52, 50, 46. And for whatever reason, the homeowner from 452, the husband, was the one that was opposed. The wife, she was supporting it. We had a letter, she approved it, but he went ahead and got signatures from them. I know they have some concerns about that they're seeing it from their backyard. You can clearly see that that's not the case. With the cedars, this is going to grow up in 1 year. You won't see anything. One of the letters of opposing it is 1446 Devon. As far as I'm concerned, I believe that house is for sale right now. So, you know, I don't know what would be the opposition on this. This is yes, it's a bit of a modern design, but the elements on the house and the cabana is wood siding, stone, and ACM. So it blends perfectly with the area, with the changes. Where if you look at the design of the cabana again on the renders, we're trying to do something that will blend with the street. You don't see this from the street from anywhere. The only place that you can see a bit is from the house behind. Again, we have 1 letter of support, 1 letter in opposition from the same house. So again, we're not really asking for much. We just want the privacy for this family. That is the exact same reason why Oakville eliminated any kind of balconies in Oakville since 2017, I think it is, or 17 or 16, so that people don't see into the backyards or the pools of the neighbors. So this pretty much does that. And again, with the oversized cedars, we'll be sure that it gives privacy to all around, all the neighbors. So I'm willing to take any questions or concerns that the neighbors or you'll have about this project.
Thank you, Mr. Castillo. Are there any questions or items of clarification of the applicant at this time? Mr. Talski, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Castillo, the neighbors in their letters seem to indicate that they thought the cabana was being built larger than what was being proposed. And when I went back and looked at your drawings, there seems to be an inconsistency. The site plan shows a faint red line with dimensions 7.3 by 5.6, but your roof plan shows dimensions of 8.23 by 6.1 if I convert it to metric. So it appears to me that the site plan is showing the outline of where the supports are, but not showing all the overhangs beyond that. And the roof plan is showing the full size of the roof. So I guess my critical question is, when you applied for your variance, which dimensions did you use? Because if you use the 7.3 by 5.6, you probably haven't asked for a large enough variance.
So yeah, the dimension that we used was the original base structurally of the cabana. what you see as overhang, as you know, in Oakville, if I'm not mistaken, if you go more than 2 feet of overhang, that will go towards a lot coverage. In this case, we don't have 2 feet, we have 18 inches of overhang all around, except at the front, except towards the pool, we're flushed. There's no overhang in there. So the dimensions are for basically the footprint of the stone walls at the back and the side, and all the way to the pool. So yeah, if you look at what I send my structural drawings that the structural engineer is doing. So these are my working drawings. So the dimension that you see for the roof, yeah, that's with the overhang, which adds 18 inches all around. But as I said, the 18 inches falls within the allowed roof overhang in any building, as far as I'm concerned. When we do a home design, as long as we don't go over 2 feet of overhang, it doesn't go towards lot coverage.
Okay, so just for clarity of the neighbors, and we'll ask staff to confirm this as well. But so the neighbors have indicated, based on the site plan, you're building larger, but the answer is your coverage doesn't have to include the overhang. So yes, the roof is larger than the dimensions that are shown on the site plan.
Yes, and if you look at the presentation that I sent, actually on the CAD drawings, on the sections, elevations, you can actually see that. You can see the building and you can see my overhang.
Right. Okay. I wanted to bring this because it was a valid question by the neighbors as to why there seems to be a difference. And I can just ask Mr. Riaz if you can confirm.
Yeah, and sorry, and on the previous variants, 2 years ago, the cabana that we had also had an overhang of 18 inches. So it's the exact same thing.
Okay. So I can just ask Mr. Riaz again for the benefit of the neighbors that asked the questions. You can confirm Mr. Castillo's explanation that the overhang that's not shown on the site plan does not count for coverage on an accessory building?
Through you, Madam Chair, that is the case from what I understand, or I would say that these are the numbers that we've received from our zoning staff, and that's how they've calculated.
Thank you.
Sorry. Are there any further questions or items of clarification? Okay, I see none. Madam Secretary, has anyone called in with interest in speaking to this application?
Yes, we do have one that's called in.
Okay, go ahead.
If Susan can press *6 on her phone to unmute.
Susan, do you hear us?
Hello.
Yes, now we hear you. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. I apologize, Madam Chair. My name is Susan Hyatt Diorio. I'm one of the neighbors that lives at 1450 Durham Street.
If I can ask you to mute your television, I know you're watching us, but there's just an echo.
How is that now?
Yeah, that's much better. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm one of the neighbors at 1450 Durham, and a question that we have for the chair. We were taken quite by surprise as neighbors when the cabana was moved from the north side of the property. We did not receive any notice in April of 2023 that there would be an additional variance granted on the cabana that was on the north side of the property. And then it was quite a shock for us, all of us, to find out with this notice of variance that all of a sudden there's a large structure that's been switched to the east side of the property, and it's already been partially built, which in no way confirms to where it was originally supposed to be. So I think that's what you're seeing from the neighbors in this community, is that there seems to be a bait and switch going on here, where one thing's approved, something else gets partially built that has in no way been discussed. And then all of a sudden, we have people telling us, oh, well, we'll plant trees and you won't be able to see it. The fact of the matter is it's very different from what the site plan was. So that's why you're finding the community and the neighbors asking a lot of questions and saying, well, this is not what we agreed to. This is not what was approved. And we thought that you had to seek variance before you went ahead and started building a structure in the town. In this case, the structure was built, and it wasn't until we called the town and said, what is this? That then we were told that there was a variance request that had gone through that we were not notified about in April 2023. So it's very
were
different.
were you residing in your home in April 2023?
Oh yes, we all have been, and I canvassed our neighbors. None of us received a notice such as we received on this notice of application.
Is it possible that it was missed? Because we follow the guidelines of sending notices to the within 100 meters of any application that we have, and we do that very diligently. As a matter of fact, if you were here in the beginning of this application, we will actually defer applications that have had insufficient notice. So I'm just wondering if you all weren't familiar with the process, and perhaps the notification was missed somehow. But we can certainly have the Secretary Treasurer look back and see that notice has been given, and I'll have Mr. Castillo comment on your concerns. I can relate to those concerns. I understand that, and I'm sure that whatever is happening is what we're seeing right now, and we'll have him comment first before we go any further. But I appreciate your comments. Is there anything else that you wanted to say?
The only other thing, thank you, Madam Chair. The only other thing that I would say to you is that this is not in any way keeping with the neighborhood. What was originally approved was a cabana around the size of what you see. And I think in your site plans that, by the way, we all in this neighborhood that back on the property diligently follow what is happening with the property. And all of us are very familiar with the town and various committees and committees of adjustment. So the issues, the notice of application may have been issued, but it was received by none of us. So I think this is a procedural issue here. But the second thing is around the size of this structure. If you look at the size of cabanas throughout this neighborhood, they're relatively small. This is much, much bigger. And it's of concern because it's not just a pool cabana, it looks like an entertainment center. And that's very different use of the land and use of what we've been led to believe. And you can see that in the drawings as well. So there is, the neighbors feel and the community feels that we have a discrepancy about what we thought was going to happen and are very tolerant of change in the neighborhood, et cetera. And now what we see is something quite different. Those are my comments.
Thank you. Are there any questions of Ms. Hyatt at this time, or items of clarification? Okay. Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Castillo. This is your time to respond to. But before I do that, Madam Secretary Treasurer, has there anyone else called with interest for this application?
Yes, we do have another one that's waiting to.
Okay, Mr. Castillo, just take notes and I'll have you respond to all of the concerns at once.
Madam Secretary, or Madam Chair, I've moved Peter into the meeting.
Go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Pete Diorio. I live at 1450 Durham Street.
Good evening, Mr. Diorio. Go ahead.
Yes, my name is Pete Diorio. I live at 1450 Durham Street, and our property shares a small common border with the back of the subject property. I have to say we object to this application to accommodate a cabana as proposed for the following reasons. Firstly, in their covering letter to the town of Oakville dated the 20th of June, the applicant notes that they wish to increase the coverage by 63.7 meters over the allowable maximum of 271.5 meters. Let's be clear. This is a 23.5% increase over the allowable maximum coverage. We contend that that is not minor. Secondly, in the same letter, the applicant emphasizes twice that the request is for increase mostly in the rear of the building. It's not visible from the street, as though this is of no consequence. And I can assure you that from our vantage point, the proposed cabana is massive. And as can be seen in the photos that were included with our letter. Please note, these are photos and not artistic renderings that the applicant has supplied. Thirdly, the size of the cabana itself at 41.2 meters squared is much larger than what we typically see in backyards, which are perhaps 14 or 16, maybe some of them are 20 square meters, but we're certainly looking at something much larger and much different from anything that you can see around here. And several of those are visible on the plans that have been, the subject's plans that have been shown tonight. Finally, the structure's already been largely completed, totally ignoring the approved variance that was granted. And how is it that an applicant can simply ignore the regulations? That's really all I have. And thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Diorio. Are there any questions or items of clarification of Mr. Diorio at this time? Okay, I see none. Madam Secretary Treasurer, is there anyone else who is interested in speaking to the committee?
Yes, we also have Edward on the phone. If he can press *6 to unmute himself, please.
Hello, Madam Chair. This is Edward Jones Imhotep. I live at 1435 Evan Road. I am basically along the south border of the property in question. I just wanted to call in because you'll note that Mr. Castillo actually ended up exhibiting a letter signed by my wife that basically ended up approving or lending its support for the variance. I just want to be absolutely clear that that letter was actually, and that consent, in fact, was obtained really under a kind of deception, essentially, that the owner ended up coming basically to our house, suggesting that the variance ended up having wide support. We were completely unaware, in fact, of the issues related to it, the changes in size, the changes in the original plan. We only recently became aware with it after, in fact, she had already signed that letter. So I do just want to end up making completely clear that there hasn't been actually some good faith consultation with the neighbors themselves in support of the variance. And in fact, there's been deception in trying to actually gain letters of support in order for the variance to go through. My own opinion is that, and we see the cabana actually most clearly from our property, that it is in fact an eyesore. The cedars that have been planted along the west side. We have no cedars and no coverage whatsoever. I'm looking actually at the cabana right now out of my dining room window. And in fact, it seems massive to me, and it does end up appearing as an eyesore. It's possible that cedars will end up being planted and that those cedars will be as tall as Mr. Castillo says, but they will effectively create a cedar wall along the back, basically, of our property as well. The last thing that I just wanted to end up saying is that you know, I do think that we're the people also who are going to be left with the consequences of this construction. That is that I don't know what ultimate goals the builder or the owner has for this, but we're the people who are actually going to be living with the consequences basically for our neighborhood. And so in my own opinion, and I leave it obviously to the committee to make a decision, but I don't think that this kind of bad faith negotiation and deception should end up being rewarded, in fact, with a variance. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Are there any questions or items of clarification, Mr. Jones, at this time?
Thank you.
Okay, I see none. Anyone else, Madam Secretary Treasurer?
No, Madam Chair, I don't see any more calls or anyone else with their hand up in the meeting.
Okay, very well. Mr. Castillo, this is your time to respond to all the neighbors' concerns and answer questions from us before we take the matter into committee and have a motion. Go ahead.
Yes, I'll start with, I guess, with the first comments. If it's possible to go back to my first page presentation. The lady was asking about the location of the previous approved cabana. On the last committee of adjustment, the cabana was already, if you go to the very first one, was already at the back of the property. As you can see on the left image, it was already there. Yeah, when we first designed the house, it was gonna go on the north side. That's why my render had it like that. But when we went to committee, we changed it to that same location. So there was no relocation without a permit. That's where the cabana was gonna go. So that was just, I wanted to make that clear. In regards to the, I guess the information that the city sends, it's not up to us. We do put a sign when you guys ask us, so the neighbors can walk and they see that there's a committee of adjustment happening with the date. So the information is there. And as far as I'm concerned, or what I've been informed, is some of the neighbors at the back on Durham, they did receive that letter. Again, but that's not up to us, right? Going back to what they were mentioning about that this is not a, we can scroll down to the next page, not a pool cabana. This is an entertainment area. We gotta go with the times, and you can see this in any other houses, especially in Southeast Oakville. This is not an enclosed cabana for equipment. This is an open concept. There's no walls. It is a space for entertaining. In this case, there's no speakers, no lights. The homeowner that's building this, he's going to be living there. He has little kids. Just going back to the last neighbor that was saying that he's going to keep. They're the ones staying with this. This is for the homeowner. He's going to be living on it. He's not just selling it, right? But again, there's no speakers. There's nothing there. Again, there's no walls around it. Going back to again, I understand, and I understand that a lot of people were angry that the construction is started for this cabana, but as I mentioned, and they're saying this is a massive cabana. Of course, an inspector was going to notice it. We never had the intention of just doing it without a permit, without the proper procedure. The design was done, the drawings were done. We were waiting for stamps from the engineer. The client had to make a decision for his framer to frame it and take a chance. We thought it would not be an issue again because it's an open concept cabana, but there was never an intention of building this without a permit because it's obvious. Whoever goes there, they can see it. They're mentioning it's massive. Of course, the inspector will notice it. So it was never an intention. I just want to make clear of that. In regards to with my phone writing. Again, for the neighbor that called, the last neighbor, again, I didn't ask for the letters, the homeowner went. As far as I know, they knock in a few doors and try to get as many signatures as they can. But again, as you know, the sign, I put personally the sign in the front of the property. They can go, they can log into the website and see what's happening. They can see my old drawings, my new drawings, everything's there, everything's explained. Again, yeah, they're planning to put cedars all around. And yeah, you're going to have a wall of cedars, but I don't see anything wrong with that, right? You're going to get landscape, privacy. You're not looking at a wooden, fence, right? So I don't see what would be the problem of putting these nice, expensive cedars all around. Again, looking at the other pictures, if you go scroll down, you can see the cabana right now because it's on the wood on the wood finish, right? So this is going to have a stone and a nice wood siding and a nice metal roof. So it will blend, it would camouflage with the backyard, with the trees. So I can guarantee that they won't be seen, they won't even notice it from anywhere, especially from 1454 or 1450, they won't see it. 1435, I do agree, they might see it, but it won't be an eyesore when it's finished, as you can see. Hopefully the members went to the site and they review it and they notice that they can see how the final product will look and how it will blend with the street and with the landscape and make a decision based on that.
Okay. Thank you.
Sorry, one more thing. If just to put it as a concept, in this cabana, if we leave the where the stone is with the roof, and the rest we leave it as a pergola, it will pass. We will need a variance. The structure will be exactly the same, but we wouldn't need a variance. We have a pergola in there, but there's no point. Might as well have that covered area for the kids for the rain. But just something to keep in mind that we could have done this without going to the committee, by just making a pergola. The front part, the front half of the cabana.
So what's the inside of the cabana then? If the front half is just
so if you
scroll
down to the renders, oh, sorry. Maybe a few more here. So you see the on the, let's say, the top left, right? You see the stone pillars and the back wall. And then you have an overhang, right, with the cabana. If halfway of that overhang, we don't have a solid roof and we have a pergola, we don't go over the committee over the maximum square footage. But at the same time, the structure will look exactly the same from anywhere. So it's just, but then you will get water going into there, right? But that's basically what I want to explain, is that because it is an open concept with a back wall and just a couple pillars, you have a roof, then that's lot coverage. Unfortunately, it's like a carport. But if we were to go half of it, then we can probably reduce the lot area. But there was no point because the front fascia will still be there. The side fascia will be there. And you have, 20 inches in between each of the pergolas, and you get the water in there.
Okay. Are there any questions or items of clarification of Mr. Castillo? Okay, we'll take the matter into committee.
Madam Chair, sorry to interrupt. We do have the homeowner with his hand up. I don't know if he wanted me to.
Oh, the homeowner?
Yeah.
Where is the homeowner?
Would you like me to move him into the meeting?
Yes, go ahead.
His name is Patrick.
Hello, Madam Chair and members of committee. Just wanted to say a few words, if you don't mind. Obviously, I'm the owner and constructor of the property. Obviously, the intention is to move in with my family. I have kids. Privacy is a big issue for me. So I just wanted to address a few of the comments from the individuals that phoned in. So number one, for example, Edward, which resides at 1435 Devon Road. We've had multiple conversations, from the start of the project to the fence. I've approached him on multiple occasions, both him, his wife, both of them together. So I just want to clarify that it was never the intention to go above his head, or to kind of inflict any kind of duress or anything. I've spoken to both of them on multiple occasions. So I really don't know. And one of them being about the cabana, which when I did speak to his wife went to the back, saw the cabana. I mean, the cabana has been up for a period of time, and it didn't seem to be a concern. And as well with Doug and Jackie, I did also have multiple conversations with them. And ultimately, it seems like it comes down to the aspect of privacy, which I do want to stress on the fact that, I'm really trying to go above and beyond to create that privacy for this property, because I do care for that. And all of the pictures that have been submitted seem to be pictures from the second story, which at the end of the day, when I have kids playing in the pool and family over, my intention is not to create this cabana as an entertainment sector. It's to have privacy. This is why I'm apart from the trees that I'm going to be replacing as well on the property. I've gone and seeked out cedars, and if you know anything about cedars, usually you could buy them for between 4 to 6 feet. To find cedars 10 to 12 feet, you have to go to British Columbia, and this is the lengths that I'm willing to go to create that privacy. So given a chance that I had to speak to each and individual neighbors, to bring them to the yard and explain exactly what my thoughts are, it's not to create a large canvas. It's really, I want to create a secluded, more private area that benefits everybody, because at the end of the day, within a year, you're not going to see the roof line. And I really truly believe that the cabana itself, it's not going to create an eyesore or any kind of inconvenience for anybody else. And this, I mean, ultimately the cabana that was there originally was in the same place. It just we're extending it more so width-wise. But the roof line is, if anything, it would be a little bit less because of obviously the slope on the original roof, versus now it's a flat roof. And again, I want to be clear that I'm really trying to work with everybody in the neighborhood, and I'm really trying to, because it seems like above everything else, the privacy is the main aspect here. So, you know, given a chance, I'd like to speak to everybody and you know, through obviously the committee, to kind of stress on the fact that I, if anything, care about the privacy more than anybody else. And, you know, I want to not create just a massive entertainment, I don't know, sector, what people kind of perceive it as. You know, I just want to kind of have a secluded area where, you know, my kids can play, enjoy the pool without, you know, people from the second story looking in and seeing the whole yard, which ultimately this is what, you know, is being done. So again, I just wanted to chime in. I appreciate the time. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Patrick. Any questions of the homeowner at this time, Mr. Shallow? Okay, we have none. We'll now take the matter into committee. Who would like to start the ball rolling? Everyone seems to be looking over their drawings. I'll give you a minute or two. Okay. Who would like to start the discussion? If you're saying something, Stuart, I can't hear you.
No, I'm just deciding whether.
Oh, okay, because
Okay,
I
I'll
can
make a
see your
motion.
mouth moving, but I
Oh, yeah.
can't hear it.
You're just hoping. Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to make a motion to approve. And I do realize that this is quite a large cabana, and the increase in lot coverage is, shall we say, pretty big, but the cabana isn't what I see, what the square footage or size of the cabana itself is relative, the structure, the building, I should say, is small. It's the roof that is so big. And I don't think that I've listened to the the neighbor's concern. But I would still, in my opinion, the variance are minor in nature and conforms to the forecast on the planning. And therefore, I put forth a motion to approve. The application is applied for, subject to the standard conditions that the accessory building be constructed in general accordance with the submitted site plan dated June 13th, 2024, and the elevation drawing dated June 20th, 2024, and that the approval expires 2 years from the date of the decision if a building permit has not been issued for the proposed construction.
Okay, thank you. Is there a discussion on this recommendation? Okay, see none. All those in support? Okay, your application has been approved, none opposed.
Very much.
Thank you, have a good night.
Thank you too.
Thank you,
Good
committee.
evening.
Good evening. Application CAV. Sorry, I lost track of it. Oh, this one. Okay, we are at application CAV 120 of 2024 at 4075 6th line. Again, that's CAV 120 2024 at 4065 6th line. We have Brandon Bortoluzzi. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Perfect. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. As stated, my name is Brandon Bortoluzzi. I'm an architect and associate at Salter Pilon Architecture. We've been working with the town of Oakville and Oakville Fire on the development of the new Oakville Fire Hall 9, which also includes a fire prevention office at the intersection of 6th Line and Loyalist Trail, the address 4075 6th Line. If we go to the next slide, please. The proposed facility is a fire hall and, as stated, fire prevention office for education, fire investigation, and fire prevention on a 2nd story. So it's a 2-story facility, around 1,364 square meters in total area, including a 3-garage apparatus garage, 2 full drive-through bays for 2 fire trucks, and a 3rd half bay for the fire prevention van. Again, this is split over 2 levels with the fire prevention offices on the 2nd floor. We are applying for 3 variances based on the site plan layout of the facility. The first of these is related to parking, and the other 2 are related to the front and flankage yards. If we could go to the next slide, please. So as noted, the first variance is to increase the maximum allowable parking on the site. Based on the zoning bylaw, we are permitted 28 parking spaces, and based on the requirements of the fire department, we are requesting an increase to 46 total parking spaces. As you can see on the slide, these parking spaces are defined based on the use and function of the facility. 20 of these spaces would be for active firefighters staffed at the facility. 15 would be for the active fire prevention staff at the facility. So those would be their personal vehicles coming into work in the morning. 9 vehicles would be for the fire prevention fleet vehicles that would be parked full-time on the site, essentially as their lot, as their home base, with this being that primary location for those individuals. And then 2 visitor spaces for members of the community coming in to meet with fire prevention officers or visitors to the fire station for whatever reasons. The fire facility is not a defined use within the zoning bylaw, and so we were left to apply the general 1 parking space per 30 meters squared of leasable floor area. That did not include based on the interpretation of the planning and zoning review, that did not include for the apparatus bay, garage spaces, and a couple other spaces, which is where that 28 space count comes from. But as you can see there, I guess the 46 spaces, to put it succinctly, is just a requirement based on the functional staffing needs of the fire department at this facility. If we go to the next slide, please. The second variance, as you can see highlighted in the green on the site plan, is for an increase to the maximum allowable front yard setback. Based on the zoning bylaw, the allowable setback, or allowable maximum setback along 6th line for this facility, which we're applying the institutional zoning, despite this actually being in the SA zoning. Fire facilities fall within the institutional regulations of the zoning bylaw. So the maximum allowable is 6 meters. We're proposing a maximum front yard setback of 17 meters. This one works hand in hand with the next variance, which is on the next slide, please, which is an increase to the maximum allowable flank yard setback. Again, the institutional zoning bylaw allows for a maximum of 6 meters. We're proposing an increase to 29 meters. The reason for both of these increases in maximum allowable setback is to permit the positioning of the facility on the site in a way that allows fire apparatus vehicles, which have quite large turning radiuses, to access the garage spaces, as well as keeping both the entry point and the exit point for those fire trucks as far away from the intersection of Loyalist and 6th line as possible to go in line with traffic and transportation recommendations for those turning radiuses and queuing of vehicles when responding to and returning from a fire call. In the case of the flankage yard setback, if we were to apply the zoning for the SA zone that this falls within, there would actually not be a maximum allowable flankage yard within SA, but because we're applying the institutional zoning for the fire hall use, we do then increase to that 6 meter setback, the 6 meter current allowable, which again, we're proposing increases to 29 meters. I think I will leave it at that. I don't think there is much more for me to make as a point at this point in time, but happy to respond to any comments or questions of clarification.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions or items of clarification of the applicant at this time? Madam Secretary Treasurer, has anyone called with interest for this application?
Madam Chair, there have been no calls and no one has their hand up.
Very well, thank you very much. If there are no questions, no items of clarification, we'll take the matter into committee. Who would like to move a motion? Go ahead, Mr. Dickey.
Thank you. I'll step right up this time.
Okay. I did see you say something. You were mouthing something.
There was
no voice coming out. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Based upon my review of the owner's applications and the plans submitted together my site visit, presentation by the owner's consultant, and the planning staff's report, I am satisfied that the variances are minor in nature and conform to the 4 tests under the Planning Act, and I put forth a motion that the application as applied for be approved subject to the conditions that the fire hall be constructed in general accordance with the final approved site plan to the satisfaction of the Director of Planning and Development, and that the approval expires 2 years from the date of the decision. The building permit has not been issued for the proposed construction.
Very well, thank you. Is there a discussion on this recommendation? I see none. All those in support? Okay, the application has been approved, none opposed. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, application CAV 122 at 411 Sharon Drive. Again, that's CAV 122 of 2024 at 411 Sharon Drive.
Madam Chair, I don't see the applicants in the meeting currently as an attendee. They were here, but I don't see them listed anymore online.
Okay. Okay, we can take the next matter, and if they do show up, we can come back to them, just for expediency. We're going to table 122, and we're going to move to CAV 124 of 2024 at 358 Pinehurst Drive. Again, that's CAV 124 of 2024 at Pinehurst, 358 Pinehurst Drive. Ms. Kara Josie, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, great. My name is Kara Josie from Ben Homes, the design and build company working on this project. And I'm speaking to you on behalf of the homeowners at 358 Pinehurst Drive. Our clients recently purchased this home because they love the neighborhood with its sprawling lots and mature trees. They also love the home's modest mid-century design style and hope to make some minor adjustments that would preserve the home's charm while updating the functionality and efficiency to better suit their needs. This first page of our presentation shows the home in its current state and our proposed design rendering. As you can see, we plan to maintain a lot of the architectural details, including the roof line and overall scale, adding some small additions to the footprint to make the dwelling more livable for the homeowners. Although all of the trees are not indicated in the proposed rendering, we have engaged an arborist to work with us through the design and construction process to ensure that all 37 trees on the property and nearby vicinity are protected and maintained. As per the arborist report included with our submission, the arborist concluded that none of the 37 trees will be affected by the proposed construction. If I could go to the next slide. This site plan is to illustrate how the existing home sits on the uniquely shaped lot, with some small proposed additions to the dwelling highlighted in yellow. The green lines indicate the existing encroachments on the property, with 2 along the rear property line at 8.29 meters and 9.08 meters, and 1 on the south side property line at 2.84 meters. The proposed rear and side yard variances that we are requesting, with an allowable rear yard setback of 10.5 meters, we are requesting a 7.38 meter setback to the structure indicated with the orange line, which is to a proposed support column supporting the roof of the covered deck. As well, a further canopy projection at this point of 2.04 meters is shown with the blue line. With an allowable side yard setback of 4.2 meters, we are requesting a 2.48 meter setback to the structure, which is to the edge of the proposed basement walkout indicated with an orange line, and a further canopy projection of 0.75 meters as shown in blue. As stated in the comments from the planning department in the minor variance report, staff note that there are other properties in the surrounding area with similar variances and various architectural styles. This proposal continues to maintain and preserve the established neighborhood character. Additionally, the unique shape of the lot and the way the existing dwelling is situated further contributes to the necessity of these variances. We have done our best to design the home that serves the homeowners and maintains all the positive attributes of the existing dwelling and property, as concluded by the planning department in the minor variance report. The proposed setbacks and eve encroachments do not result in any adverse effects onto abutting properties, and the dwelling as proposed assists in maintaining and protecting the existing neighborhood character. The one-story additions do not contribute to any adverse massing or scale impacts from the public realm, and staff are of the opinion that the request maintains the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw. Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee, for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Josie. I have to commend you. It's not often that we find applicants coming to maintain the exact same home that is purchased with the same footprint and the same roof line. It's actually quite refreshing, if I might say so.
Oh, thank you. We love the house, so we want to keep it as much the same as we can.
Yeah, and that's great. Are there any questions or items of clarification for Ms. Josie at this time? Okay, I see none. Has anyone called with interest for this application, Madam Secretary Treasurer? I know we moved one up, but I think we had plenty of time for people to call in.
Yeah, no, Madam Chair, there have been no calls and no one with their hand up.
Okay, very well. Then we'll take the matter into committee if there are no items of clarification. Thank you, Mr. Hardcastle. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll step off from your comments. It is refreshing, and I have to admit, when I was out on site, I had misread the plans and thought the large tree in front of the building was to be removed. And thank you for going through that in detail. You highlighted my misreading of the drawings, so I am happy to hear that to see a plan that has the retention of the building. Sensitive to the architectural style modifications and additions, and well done. So I will put forward a motion of approval, finding that the requested variances do conform to the four tests of the Act. There will be little to no impact upon the existing character of the site and the existing character of the area. The motion would be subject to two conditions. Those being that the dwelling be constructed in general accordance with the submitted site plan dated July 9th, 2024, and elevation drawings dated June 3rd, 2024, and that the approval will expire within 2 years of the date of the decision if a building permit has not been issued. I would note that there were no members of the public present with respect to this matter.
Very well. Thank you, Mr. Hardcastle. Is there a discussion on this recommendation? Okay, I see none. All those in support? Okay, the application has been approved, none opposed. Thank you, Ms. Josie. Have a good evening.
Thanks very much. You too.
Okay, if anyone is interested in joining our meeting, the number to call is 905-815-6095. And staff will be standing by to take your call and provide you with further instructions. Have the owners or applicants for Sharon Drive, 411 Sharon Drive, the CEV 122, signed back in, Madam Secretary Treasurer?
No, Madam Chair, I don't see them.
Okay, very well. I'll note on record that we've called upon the applicant for and agent for CEV 122 of 2024 at 411 Sharon Drive for a second time, and they are not present. Moving on to application CEV 125 of 2024 at 3540 and 3560 Wycroft Road. Again, that's CEV 125 of 2024 at 3540 and 3560 Wycroft Road. And we've got Patrick Pearson as the agent. Go ahead, Mr. Pearson.
Good evening, Chair, members of the committee. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, my name is Patrick Pearson. I'm an associate land use planner at Glenshire Associates, and we represent the owners of the property on the screen. We've reviewed the staff report, have no concerns. I'll just give a brief overview of what we're proposing, and then I'll be here to answer any questions that you guys may have. Hopefully you guys are as happy with our application as the last one. So I know you guys seem to like that last house, and I agree, it was a nice house. So here for the first slide, this is for application minor variance A125-2024. The property is municipally addressed 3540 and 3560 Wycroft Road. It's located south of the QEW. You can see on the left side there, and it's at the intersection of Wycroft Road and Burloak Drive. It has an area of approximately 5 hectares with dual frontage on both Burloak and Wycroft. Next slide, please. So in 2023, we were the land use planning consultants who got a site plan approved on this property. So the site plan was approved for 2 speculative warehouse buildings. So you can see there's one smaller one, building A, fronting Wycroft, and then a larger warehouse at the rear of the property, which has access onto Burloak. The site plan was designed and approved using the warehouse parking standard, which required 166 parking spaces on the approved plan. And I guess this plan shown here was the plan that was approved. Next slide, please. So since the approval, I guess as I mentioned earlier, it was built as a speculative building. There's no tenants. So since the approval, the owner of the property has secured a tenant for the unit shown in green on building A. The tenant that they secured is a flooring and tile company. Their name is Serena Tile. They sell flooring and floor-related goods to a diverse clientele within the Oakville and Toronto area. They have a few other existing locations in the GTA in Toronto, and they're looking to expand into the Oakville market. So this will be their first sort of Oakville location. And as part of their sort of user or usability of the unit shown in green there, the front portion will be sort of used as a showroom kind of area that they can display their flooring, whereas the back portion of the unit will be used more as like the warehouse portion that they store their material. Next slide, please. So you can see on, I guess, the right screen, the blue area shows the portion of the unit that will be used for the showroom, and whereas the portion at the rear of the unit is the warehouse. So the warehouse and retail uses, they're both permitted uses within the existing zoning on the site. But as mentioned earlier, the spec building was built on the warehousing parking rates, whereas this retail use has a higher parking rate than warehouse, which ultimately triggers a need for a reduction in parking. And then just maybe a subtle nuance that we've had a few calls with staff to discuss. So the way the town interprets the bylaw is, even though that just the showroom portion, I guess, is considered the retail use portion of the site, for the purposes of calculating parking, the entire part of the unit, so the green and blue portion, is or the, I guess, retail parking rate is applied to the whole unit, so not just the front portion. So I just mentioned that because, you know, obviously that's going to trigger a much higher parking rate, and that's sort of what's triggering the bylaw requirements being so much higher than what the tenant actually needs. So I guess for that reason, primarily, we're going to be seeking a reduction in the parking. So in support of our application, or as part of the application we submitted, we worked with a traffic consultant, and they undertook a parking analysis. And within the parking analysis, they used a surrogate site for one of Serenitile's actual other locations in Toronto. So it was a pretty good like apples to apples comparison, and I think we got a pretty good idea of how many parking spaces this I guess future operation will require, just based on that, a pretty good comparison. So the parking study found that this site, based on using the surrogate site and a parking study that they did, that only 8 spaces are required for Serenitile at this unit, whereas the bylaw requirement, so the retail parking standard for the whole unit, requires 77. So that's the reduction we're seeking. And I guess in general, to ensure that there's not a surplus of parking on the site, and like there's not like an over allocation of parking for this unit, we're seeking relief from the parking standards. Next slide. So yeah, we've read the staff report. We agree with the recommendations. We're of the opinion that is minor in nature, and we respectfully request that the committee approve the application. If you guys have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you, Mr. Pearson. Are there any questions or items of clarification of Mr. Pearson at this time? There's someone who has their hand up. Madam Secretary Treasurer, says the COA phones.
Madam Chair, it's someone has called in for the next item, not for this one.
Okay, very well. So there are no questions or items of clarification, and no one has called in with interest for this item. We can take the matter into committee. Who would like to move a motion? Mr. Hardcastle, go ahead. Thank you.
Madam Chairman, have you volunteered me to? Yes.
Mr. Talowski had his hand up, and I don't know why I said Mr. Hardcastle.
It's okay. I'm happy to take this one, Madam Chairman. He beat me to it by a matter of seconds, so I will do as requested.
It's the brain. I don't know what it did, but I saw his hand went up, but I totally said.
I can relate. I've had one of those
personally, Madam Chair.
I apologize.
Having undertaken my site visit, having reviewed the materials, including the written staff report, and having heard the presentation from the applicant, I am satisfied that the requested variance conforms to the 4 tests of the Act. Accordingly, I will put forward a motion of approval subject to 2 conditions. Those being that the property be constructed in general accordance with the submitted site plan dated May 28th, 2024, and that the approval will expire within 2 years of the date of the decision if a building permit has not been issued. I would note that there were no members of the public present with respect to this matter.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Hardcastle. Is there a discussion on this recommendation? I see none. All those in support? Okay. The application has been approved. None opposed. Thank you and have a good night.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good evening.
Okay. Have the applicants for CAV 122 of 2024 come back into the meeting, Madam Secretary Treasurer?
Yes, Madam Chair, they have.
Okay, very well.
I will move them over.
Let's take that matter then. CAV 122 of 2024 at 411 Sharon Drive. I have Mr. King as the applicant or agent. Anyone interested in speaking to the committee on any matter, it's at 905-815-6095. Scroll back.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, Mr. King.
Yes, I'm sorry. I'm attending a wedding and this was important and I had to step out of the wedding. Okay. So my house is 411 Sharon Drive, and then we didn't have enough parking spaces. We had a parking space for just 4 cars outside the house. And the portion you see on the left, which was the extension that we had asked for, had to be built to accommodate the extra cars based on the incident we had. So I had my Range Rover parked in front of the house with my son's car parked behind me. However, thieves came, stole the Range Rover, drove over the lawn, which will be the portion on the left-hand side, drove over the lawn, drove across the gutters, and took the car away. So thereafter, we approached an engineer to find out what could we do if we have to park our cars outside. And then the left side of the road, which is the left side you see there, was paved. And we had to do retaining walls so that you can't drive a car over and beyond the grass across the neighborhoods and just take the car out like was done before. And that was the basis for our request. We were told that the lining, I'm not able to make, I don't know if you can see me moving my cursor, was a bit extended out, and we're not supposed to have extra parking. Even though I do have 3 kids, all finished university, living at home in view of the economic situation, Mrs. Chair, 5 of us with cars, the 4 parking spaces was definitely not enough, even in the first option. We do park sometimes in the garage. So we had to do that extra space. And that's, I think, the basis for being here tonight.
Okay.
So we had spoken to the neighbors. We didn't have any neighbor complain, except if there's one here. It's not infringing on the neighbor's park, and we still have a lot of ample space. The house and the lot and the land left for us to do landscaping and grass is at least twice what the building stands on at this time. And if not that we're in a corner, most of the neighbors on the street, they have 2 driveways coming in like a circle, and they have a fence and trees covering and shielding the property. But we're told it was a corner piece and we couldn't put a fence wall around the house. So this was done, 1, for our safety, 2, for the convenience. But the inspector said the retaining wall that we put at the end not supposed to be there, because he said it's sitting right on the edge of the city line. That's what I understood it to be. That was the main issue we were told.
So will you have to remove that retaining wall?
Yeah, if we remove the retaining wall, which is the issue, then the cars will be driven away and stolen again. Like that's how the cars were stolen before. And we couldn't put a fence. If we put a fence on the house, which other people have a fence, it will be on one side. We can't cover the other side. It will look a bit square or square. That's the word to use, because the corner lot on the other side.
Okay, but you understand that you cannot have a retaining wall sitting on city property boundaries, and that's okay. And the variance that you are applying for has nothing to do with the retaining wall. Regardless, the town will ask you to remove the retaining wall. The variance that you're requesting is to increase the widthway of your driveway.
That's what I'm saying. Is that increase of the width that goes to this city line edge. That was the variance. The acceptable limit or permit was a bit closer than that edge.
Okay.
Does it make sense?
Okay.
That's how I understand it. Take on my notes.
Yeah, Mr. O'Hare, can you clarify something for me?
Yes.
On the drawings, it says retaining wall to be removed as it is currently on city property and be amended to its original state as per city bylaw.
Yes, through you, Madam Chair. If this application were to be approved, the retaining wall would have to be removed, because even though the driveway width is being expanded, that boundary line is still with the town property and within the town's right of way, and so that retaining wall would have to be removed even if this particular application were to be approved.
I have a quick question, please. Let's assume retaining wall is removed. If it's on city line, are we allowed to plant pigs or free, or just nothing on city? We can't plant. Can we put fig trees there, just like shrubs, or no?
Through you, Madam Chair, you are allowed to plant shrubbery or flowers. There are certain conditions within the bylaw requiring adequate line of sights and daylight triangles to ensure that there's visibility from the driveway to the street. So the maximum height of any sort of shrub or perennial plant would have to be 3 feet or 0.9 meters. It couldn't be taller than that. The other thing too is if the town does have to do work on their utilities, whether it be sewers or electrical lines, the town does have the right to remove any plantings that you do plant within the right of way, and to restore that particular site with an area of sod or grass. So you would be able to plant cedars or shrubs as long as they're at the appropriate height. And also knowing that with that, there is a potential that the town, when they do have to do work within their right of way, might have to remove those particular plantings.
Okay. If Madam Chair, the committee allows, we could ask the city for the dimensions of the shrub, just to at least have some form of protection for the thieves to come and violate our space. And that andulant, that axis will conform with the line of sight, you said, the height.
Yeah, because you're on a corner property, so you have different regulations than regular homes, and that have to be maintained.
Madam Chair, this side that we're talking about is not the corner side. The corner side, yes, we're not putting a fence or anything on that side. This other side is not on the corner side, so we're going to leave that. The real purpose is not necessarily for the aesthetics of the house, but for the violation and the protection of property there. If they permit that side to just have, remove the retaining wall on city property and then have shrubs to any dimension, something that you can just drive over that looks like a buffer on that side. That would be what I'll
And I
be
think the planner
requesting.
was clear. I think the planner was clear. You are able to do these things, but you just have to make sure that you are within the regulations that they provide you in terms of height and in terms of what is acceptable to plant in those areas.
Fair
But
enough.
either way, the retaining wall will definitely have to come down regardless of how this application proceeds.
Correct. I agree. Noted.
Are there any questions or items of clarification from the committee members? Go ahead, Mr. Talski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A question for staff. The retaining wall seems to be ancillary item to the actual issue that's in front of the committee. So just so it's clear to the applicant, Mr. Hare, the issue at hand is it looks like the applicant had a 6 meter wide driveway that he could have legally increased its width to 9 meters, but he increased the width to 16.6. So it's that additional 7.6 meters in width that is not permitted by the bylaw.
Yes, through you, Madam Chair, that is correct. The home, as originally constructed, was built with a 6 meter wide driveway with tapers along the side where it narrowed in towards the culvert before opening back up again at the street within the street on Sharon Drive. There has been a engineering permit application process that started to allow the driveway at the maximum width of 9 meters, which is the maximum allowed under the bylaw, and to remove the tapers so that the entire driveway width will be 9 meters from the garage to the street. So the additional 7.6 meters in width, which has been constructed on the property already without the proper permitting in place beforehand, is what this variance application is about in particular. So staff had some concerns with the application as is in regards to, not only issues with stormwater runoff, which we did speak with engineering as well, about concerns with stormwater runoff and the amount of hardscape on the property, but in addition to neighborhood character, insofar as majority of the homes in the area have one access driveway. There is a property 2 doors down on Sharon Drive that does have a cul-de-sac driveway, but
Yes.
it's one lane in width, and was built and constructed prior to current zoning standards. So would be illegal non-conforming. But otherwise, within the neighborhood, there are no other driveway width variances that had been approved, and nothing to the caliber that's being proposed.
May I ask a question?
Just hold on, Mr. King. Okay, just hold on. Anything further, Mr. Tulowski?
No, Madam Chair, that's a helpful explanation. Thank you.
Anyone else from the committee that has questions? Go ahead, Mr. Dickey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To the town planner again. In the comment, it said that he doesn't have an adequate landscaping strip in front. Does the zoning bylaw or some other guidelines say you have to have a landscaping strip in that situation?
Through you, Madam Chair, there are no soft landscaping requirements for front yards or side yards in terms of landscaping. So there isn't a required landscape strip. It's just, typical fashion for most dwellings that, to provide adequate space within the front yard to have tree plantings and other softscape areas. So although a landscape strip in and of itself is not a requirement to have in that area, could be sod, it could be grass, could be, shrubs or bushes. There's no requirement. It's just the additional hardscape area of the driveway is not a warranted or welcome impact from this proposed development, as there are potentials with stormwater runoff risks and flooding concerns.
Thank you. Just one more question. As the owner is questioning, he would be allowed to plant shrubs or whatever on the edge of the road line, on the town land, in front of his relocated, realigned retaining wall. Well, that would address a landscaping strip. Does that seem to be, we made it a condition that he plant that. Does that seem to solve that particular problem, concern?
I think that's a condition.
Through you, Madam Chair, if you were to add a condition, stating that the existing retaining wall be replaced with soft landscaping elements such as shrubs or bushes or grasses, that would be fine in that regard, in terms of eliminating the issue with engineering for having that retaining wall on town property, as well as for issues with screening and aesthetic purposes behind, covering that portion of the driveway. But the kind of crux of the issue is still the amount of hardscaping on the property, and how wide the driveway is and how much of the front yard is paved surface area. So although town staff wouldn't be opposed to a new condition relating to the retaining wall in this instance, it's not germane to this particular application.
Another question.
Go ahead, Mr. Dickey. I know where you're going with that. Go ahead.
Oh, technically, the front yard is Tansley, although the house faces Sharon. For the town planner, so he has a lower, shallower flankage setback. That's where the problem arises. He can't get 4 cars on that driveway. Now he's tried something else so he can get 4 cars on a driveway, which normally might be achievable on a 7.5 meter front yard setback. That's where I see this fellow has this situation, predicament maybe, that is kind of like his house is facing the wrong way. If it had been built, you know what I mean? If it had been built with the garage off of Tansley, he possibly wouldn't have had this problem, because his driveway would likely be long enough to accommodate 4 cars. Am I thinking wrong there, or anybody?
Through you, Madam Chair, So the technical front yard is Tansley because under the bylaw definition, the lot line with the shortest frontage is deemed to be the technical front yard. So the applicant's home is situated as such that their front yard is within the technical flankage yard. And regardless, in terms of like not only the definition, the existing driveway length from the garage door to the street is 10.6 meters from Sharon Drive. So 10.6 meters, and it's on the site plan that was previously posted for committee during the presentation. It's 5.8 meters from the edge of the street to the private property within the town's right of way, and then 4.8 meters from that line to the garage door. So you are allowed to park a vehicle on a driveway within the public right of way as long as there isn't a sidewalk that you're blocking. So the applicant as is allowed to park 4 vehicles on the driveway as is without requiring this variance. So the applicant could have 4 cars on their driveway along Tansley, but there is room as is currently without granting this variance for 4 vehicles on the driveway. And the applicant had used the driveway for 4 vehicles prior to the incident of the car theft.
Okay.
Oh, it was a car theft. I'm sorry, not
Yes.
a police. Oh, okay. I heard you said something to that effect. I just missed the fact that car. Okay.
Okay, if I may speak, Madam Chair, please.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm
Go ahead,
finished.
Mr. Okay, go
Yes.
ahead, Mr. King.
From the house to where you can say the city line is, can take only 2 cars. Of course, there's no walkway outside the house. The rest of the other parking will be on what you call the city line. Now, we had parked 4 cars, one behind the other, but yet they came and stole the Range Rover right across the lawn, which is why we had put the retaining wall. It's not a wall that is as high as even the tires or up to the house, but you can't just drive over it. It just creates a barrier. So I do understand a few things. Number one, the retaining wall, if council grants it, if we're allowed to plant shrubs there, the retaining wall can be removed. So that's number one. Number two, in the driveway, the access to come in, they had mentioned that we had widened it. We can reduce it back to whatever size within the access to come in. I don't know the dimensions. I'm not the engineer. It's not my forte. And then if that is granted, those 2 things, we will be fine based on what we have. So I've actually agreed to like all the suggestions being brought forward, the driveway in, the size of the driveway. Say we had gone beyond the line, we can come closer to whatever the line is. I don't know the dimensions by heart, I didn't draw it, but I'm more particular asking for the shrubs to be able to put that on that edge. And like the gentleman mentioned, in terms of the way the house is structured, the side that is facing the road is actually where we call the main entrance. It's actually the bigger space. It's much bigger than the other sides because I think the way they position the house, really our entrance should have been on the other street, not this street, because the back side where we have the biggest portion of land is this side that we have the cars, the side where we are paved. I don't know the dimensions in terms of the grass or landscape to hardscape on a particular property, but the side that we opened up is the side that is the biggest. And for every house on that street, if the architect could confirm where we park the cars and where the house is facing, our lot from one end to the other is the biggest on that street. Other people only have the house, the space for parking the cars, and a little space. Ours could fit 2 houses facing the same side, and it's that extra space that we put the car park. Our house could fit 2 houses facing sharing, and that was the bigger side. And in most homes I've seen in Canada, the bigger length of the house or the bigger length of the side is normally the back side or some, not necessarily the frontage, which is where our planners or whoever built the house before we bought it mixed it up. So my humble request is, number one, to remove the sidebar or the pavement, as we call it, and put the shrubs if allowed. Number two, to also allow us to the entrance driveway, will amend that, but to allow us the extra parking which we created. So,
Okay, I have to explain something to you, Mr. King, because we keep circling back, and I think that's what Mr. Talowski wanted to say previously is we are, number one, we are in no situation to comment on the retaining wall. So the retaining wall that has been constructed, that is on city property, that will have to come down regardless of the effects of this presentation or this application. Second thing is you seem to be tying the shrubbery together with the driveway width that you have extended already. Now, this extension that you made was done prior to you actually getting the approval for it. So now you are before us and we have to decide whether you can keep it or not. In terms of the shrubbery, like I said, you are on a corner lot and there is a right of way, triangle, daylight parameters that you have to adhere to. And you will have to discuss with the town what can and cannot be done in terms of shrubbery there. That is not within our purview. Okay. The only thing that we can decide on tonight is your request to keep the extended driveway, which is now 16.6 meters from the lot, that has a frontage greater than 18. So you have an extra 7.6 meters of driveway, and you are only supposed to have 9 meters. And that's the only thing that we can decide on tonight.
Okay.
Okay. And then feel free to talk to the planners afterwards, and you can go from there in terms of what you need to do in terms of shrubbery or whatever.
Okay.
So if you have no further comments, Mr. Hardcastle, you did have your hand up. I apologize. Go ahead if you had questions for the planner or Mr. King. We kind of went back and forth.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think I know I know the answer. I'm going to just ask it for the record here. So I understand correctly, there is basically 6 parking spaces exclusive of the extended driveway, 2 in the garage and 2 on the driveway on the private side and 2 on the driveway within the right of way. So 6 parking spaces. Correct? And so the purpose behind this is really to address your concerns with respect to safety or theft of one or more of your vehicles, as has happened in the past. Thank you.
Okay, so is everyone satisfied? Does anyone have any other questions? Okay, very well. We'll take the matter into committee. Who would like to start the discussion or move a motion? Go ahead, Mr. Talowski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess I'll comment on the landscaping, even though it's not part of the variance that's before us. I don't believe it's ever appropriate to impose a condition that applies to land outside of the land that's subject to the application. But having said that, that's not the issue at hand. Madam Chair, the issue at hand is the intent of the zoning bylaw is to prevent this exact situation. I don't know how this situation can be deemed to comply with the intent of the zoning bylaw, nor do I find how I could ever find it to be desirable. So, Madam Chair, I have to agree with the staff report. I don't believe this application meets the 4 tests of Planning Act, and as such, I'd have to move that it be denied.
Okay. Is there a discussion on this recommendation? Go ahead, Mr. Hardcastle.
Madam Chair, I would echo Mr. Tulowski's comments. I am struggling significantly with this achieving the objectives of the town's official plan, as well as being desirable for the appropriate development of the land. Accordingly, I'll support that motion that's on the floor.
Okay. Very well. Mr. Dickey, you have some comments. Go ahead.
Yeah, I will not be supporting that. I feel that if somehow the owner can put some shrubbery in front of it, then that would screen it to an adequate degree. I think back, and I wish I'd looked at my files, but in the last 2 or 3 months, we dealt with a property on the south side of Hickson, just east of Brownie Road, and there was the same situation as I recall, a widened driveway, and they put some landscaping, etc., in front of it, which I thought hid it to some degree. And if that could be achieved on this property, I think it could do so. But, so anyways, I'll be voting against the motion voting against the motion to deny. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Dickey. Okay, the motion before us is to deny the application that is before us, as it does not meet the 4 tests of the Planning Act. All those in support? Okay, all those opposed? And the chair abstains. So the motion carries. The application is denied.
Okay, may I ask a question or this?
Yeah, no, go ahead. Go ahead, Mr. King. How can we help you?
So my question is, so what is approval we're supposed to do? Will that be sent to us, or we wouldn't know?
Sorry, I don't understand the question.
My question is, what are we permitted to do? Would we get that from base to say this is what you are permitted, allowed to do, so we can revert to whatever is allowed?
Yes, you'll have to call the planning department and ask them what is acceptable to them, and then go from there.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
And final question after this: is there like any appeal? Like you make an appeal, go to the next stage. My first time in doing that, so I'm asking, like, Court of Appeal, Supreme Court. Is there like stages, or there's no more at the municipal level? Like,
no, you do actually have a right to appeal because you are the applicant. But that's another process. It's outside of our committee. So you'd have to file that with the Ontario Land Tribunal if you are not happy with the outcome of this meeting. Okay. And I'm sure the town will also provide you with all the information. If you so desire, you can request it and go from there.
okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Have a good evening.
Good evening. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, the next item on our agenda. Madam Secretary Treasurer, can you remind me where we were at before we went back to Sharon? Is it 411 Sandomir Place?
Yes, Madam Chair, that's correct.
Okay, very well. So we are at CAV 127 of 2021 at 411 Sandomir Place. Again, CAV 127 of 2024 at 411 Sandomir Place. We have a letter of objection from a Laura and Adam Bomers, but we have a letter of support from a D. Forster. And we have a request to attend from Stephanie and Brian Bichot, Gail Lovell, and Barb Peretti. I hope I'm pronouncing all of these correctly. And Mr. Dell, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to confirm that you all can hear me.
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Thank you, and thank you all to the committee for volunteering your time on these Wednesday evenings. I appreciate it. Welcome, of course. I haven't been before the committee since Kelly and Jen have taken over, but welcome to the shoes filled by Heather and Jasmina. My name is Nicholas Dell. I'm a planning consultant helping Kieran Designs with an infill home at 411 Sandomir Place. I've received the staff comments as well as the additional comments for support and objection from the neighbors. And before you this evening, committee, we're seeking two variances, one to increase the total floor area for a private garage, the other to increase the maximum residential floor area by 3.9% above what is permitted under the zoning bylaw without a variance. I'm going to go through a brief presentation, and thank you to staff for placing the site plan on the screen. It's important for the committee and the members of the interested public that are listening to understand that there are avenues for relief under the Planning Act, which is the reason and the genesis for the Committee of Adjustment. And the avenues for relief are under 4 tests related to whether or not something is good planning or bad planning, to be glib. And generally, in my professional opinion, I see overbuilds to be subordinate to a variety of variances, not just related to residential floor area, but really rather more related to the building envelope and the allowable setbacks of the building, and as well as coverage. So typically an overbuild or a monster home, in my professional opinion, is something that would increase height, it would increase coverage, it would also increase and ask for reductions to setbacks. And furthermore, the design and built form of those homes would have some intrusion and disadvantages for neighboring properties when it comes to privacy. Madam Chair, through you, this application doesn't exhibit any of those features, in my opinion, specifically as it relates to setbacks, to coverage and height, and windows or other matters of screening that not only the occupants of the proposed infill home would feel, but also the neighbors who are maybe not planning to rebuild or enjoying the current peaceful enjoyment of their lands currently. The effect of this variance, if approved by the committee this evening, which I do note for the public record that it is also supported by staff, is a matter of about 300 square feet spread across a 2-story home with a basement. We are 4 meters square over the allowable area for a garage, which contributes to about 43 square feet. If people are more accustomed to thinking in terms of imperial dimensions. And Madam Chair, I'd be happy to answer further questions that the neighbors may have about the elevations, about the different the different visual impacts that the garage and the proposed home may have on the public. It's important to understand that zoning bylaws are there to guide development as a blanket overall catch-all for administration. And every single property, every single street, every single neighborhood has to be viewed and stand on its own merits. And the question is not, should we stick to the bylaws in every case, but rather, if we were not to stick to the bylaws under a particular design in a particular neighborhood, can we demonstrate that it won't have that it will have a lack of adverse impact? And so I do see often from the community and from lay comments about sticking to the bylaws, about sticking to heights, about sticking to setbacks and so forth. But it's important to understand that if the case is reasonable and doesn't contribute to a lack of adverse impact, it's not really a numerical exercise in terms of the measurement of whether or not something is minor. So Madam Chair, I do recognize it's late in the agenda and we have 2, in my opinion, are small variances. So I'd be happy to pause my presentation here and seek any questions from the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Doe. Are there any questions or items of clarification at this time? And yes, well put. This is why we exist, and we do take every application on its own merit and where it stands within the actual environment and neighborhood. So I agree wholeheartedly with you.
Thank you.
Madam Secretary Treasurer, has anyone called with interest for this application? I did note the people who had objections and support as well as interest to attend.
Yes, Madam Chair, we have Stephanie Bishop that would like to speak. She's on the call. If she can press *6 to unmute, please.
You are unmuted. Good evening.
Okay.
You can hear me, I assume?
Yes, go ahead, Ms. Bishop.
Okay, thank you.
If you can just mute your TV so that we don't hear the echo.
Okay. How's that?
Go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
The application before you is requesting to build a 3,900 square foot house, and yes, sorry, I have to refer to imperial measure, where 3,550 square feet is allowed. This is an additional 347 square feet. As well as the house, they're requesting to build a 527 square foot garage where 484 square feet is allowed, adding another 43 square feet to the garage total. So I'd like to speak to the fourth point of the criteria of a minor variance. Point 4 is the request minor in nature. With zoning bylaws and our official plan allowing 3,554 square foot for the house plus 484 square feet for the garage, this application is requesting an additional 390 square feet for this property, which equates to approximately 10% more in total square footage. That is not minor. My husband and I have lived at our address for the past 23 years. So in respecting what and I'm sorry I didn't catch his name, the fellow who presented earlier was speaking to, when you lived this, you might have a different opinion. We renovated, pardon me, our home 15 years ago, but we did not add to the footprint when we did so. So we continue to live in our 950 square foot home. To put this variance application into perspective, the extra square footage being applied for is approximately 36.5% of the total square footage of our home. They're applying to add the equivalent of over 1/3 the entire size of our home to what is already allowed, which is already 3 times or 3.5 times the size of our home. The square footage that is allowed is already incredibly large. We believe this variance should be denied, as there is no need for this house to be any larger than what is already allowed, and it is not a minor variance. In closing, it seems that many times a minor variance for extra square footage is applied for, or it seems that, many times when a minor variance for extra square footage is applied for, the variance really is not minor, as is the case with 411 Sandmere. We, as longtime residents of Oakville, want this practice to stop. Zoning bylaws already allow for very large homes to be built on relatively small lots. The variance being applied for at 411 Sandmere Place should not be allowed, as this is not minor. Therefore, we believe this application does not fulfill the criteria of a minor variance. Lastly, if town staff were to do a walkabout in this neighborhood, we believe they would see the bill being applied for would not maintain the character of this neighborhood. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Bishop. Are there any questions of Ms. Bishop at this time? Okay, I see none. Is there anyone else that would like to speak to the committee, Madam Secretary Chair?
Madam Chair, I don't see anyone with their hand up at this time, and there have been no calls.
Very well, thank you. Mr. Dell, do you have any comments before we take the matter into committee with respect to the comments made by the neighbor?
Yes, Madam Chair, through you. I do appreciate how the language of the bylaw appears, how it presents itself when you get a notice in the mail, and you think about comparing yourself to what's beside you. But I will say, as the committee well knows, it's important to understand what you can build as of right as a comparable measure of what an established neighborhood is supposed to become and is supposed to be. Neighborhoods are stable, not static. And while I applaud the modest and I'm sure very charming nature of the size of home this woman was describing, there is some admission of awareness that they do have the ability to build larger, and the larger house they could build, I think, would be comparable in size and would be supportive of the test for minor. The intent of the official plan in the zoning bylaw is measurements at a high and very forensic level of impact. And the test for minor and the test for desirability are where it's more of an art form, less of a science. The committee has the planning instruments and the wherewithal to have conducted site visits, as well as staff who have also visited this neighborhood and and measured the prevailing character of this neighborhood and has found that their expert opinion is in keeping with support for this application. So while I understand how this process may feel from the outside, having been a professional planner for 3 generations with my father and grandfather before me, I do find that this is a common argument against what I think is a slightly untowards attitude to development. It's a growing neighborhood, but this is a measured degree of densification, and I don't believe it's an adverse impact whatsoever. And those are my comments, respectfully, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Dell. I recognize that the extra space in the garage is within the interior, so it has no effect on the view from the outside. It still looks like a 2-door garage. Where is the extra space going into the actual house, though?
Through you, Madam Chair, thank you for the question. It's also internal. Across the additional floor area of the garage, scaled up to the 2nd floor as well as the basement, you have some additional rooms made for larger hallways and washrooms. Those bedrooms that are above the garage don't have windows looking into it, and so the effect of this extra 300 square feet across 2 floors is really more of a utility base and for comfort base for exit paths towards the front and back of the house. It's not really a material amount of space dedicated to additional living units per se. It's a family living here, and they appreciate the extra space as long as it's not a negative impact to the community, and we feel that this is appropriate in that regard.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else have any comments or questions from the committee members? Okay, I see none. We can take the matter into committee.
Madam Chair, sorry to interrupt. Yes, Stephanie Bishop has her hand up. Again, is she...
well, she's already commented. So usually, once the applicant has made his comments and replied to the comments, we don't have a tendency to go back and forth. That's not within our process, but if I will allow it. Go ahead, Ms. Bishop.
You are unmuted.
Hi, sorry. Just something got under my skin a little bit, and I just want it on record. I would like to point out that we choose to live in this size of home. This is why we bought in this part of Oakville initially, because when we went about the streets here, all of the streets were very similar to the plan of our home. We were anywhere from 950 to maximum 1,200 square foot homes. I understand that there is development happening. I understand that things change over time. I'm not blind to that. What I do not agree with is, as I stated, the town allows for large already. So to be larger based on the fact that it's not even going to be for living space is what I believe was just said, then why is it needed? That's all I wanted to add. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Ms. Bishop. Now we are taking the matter into committee. There will be no more comments. Who would like to move a motion and start the discussion? Go ahead, Mr. Hardcastle.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll start the ball rolling on this one. I have some reservations with respect to this application. I find the overall size of the building to be significant in terms of the RFA variance, and the architectural design to not assist in mitigating the impacts of that upon adjacent properties. Accordingly, I'll put forward a motion to refuse the application, as I do not believe that it conforms to the 4 tests of the Planning Act. Thank you.
Okay. Any further comments? Okay, I see none. The motion before us is to deny the application as submitted, as it does not meet the 4 tests. All those in support? Okay, all those opposed? Okay, so that motion has failed. We will need another motion. Go ahead, Mr. Talowski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, Mr. Dell raised the, age-old question as to what are you judging impact and character against, what's existing or what's permitted? And in my view, you're judging the impact of the variance in excess of what's permitted and how the applicant mitigates that impact. In this case, and contrary to Mr. Hardcastle's view, I was actually surprised at the numerical extent of the variance when I looked at the plans. This house doesn't present itself to me as this having an impact that the size of the variance would, might suggest. And we know that minor is not a numerical figure. I believe the design, while it doesn't necessarily present itself that well in 2-dimensional drawings, I believe there is some significant relief throughout the building that mitigates the impact of the design on the size of the building. With that, Madam Chair, I'm going to move that the application be approved, finding it meets the 4 tests of the Planning Act. I would note that there was both opposition and support for this. I would feel need to comment on asking that the bylaw not be varied is not why we're here. We're here to assess variances to the bylaw, not to 100% adhere to the bylaw. Madam Chair, I'm going to move the application be approved, subject to 2 conditions: that the dwelling be constructed in general accordance with the submitted site plan dated July 4th, 2024, and elevation drawings dated June 14th, 2024, and that the approval expires within 2 years if the permit has not been issued.
Thank you, Mr. Talowski. Is there a discussion on this recommendation? I see none. So all those in favor? All those opposed? Okay, the application has been approved with 1 opposed.
Thank you, committee. Thank you, staff.
Thank you. Have a
to the
good
neighbors.
evening.
You too. Good night.
Okay. Last item on our agenda this evening is 049 of 2024 at 826 Sanderwood Road, deferred from March the 26th. Again, that's a CAV 049 of 2024, deferred from March the 20th of 2024 at 326 Sandalwood Road. I apologize, I said 826, it's 326 Sandalwood Road. Now we have, I believe, Lawrence Malik as the agent.
That is correct. Good evening.
Good evening. Go ahead, Mr. Malik.
I'd like to thank the committee for taking the time. I know it's rather late. I appreciate the hard work everyone's doing. So thank you very much for your time and consideration, and certainly I'm also anxious to have dinner. It's going to be a late dinner for me. I wanted to just first start off by letting those who are listening on the presentation as well as committee that our client had made a presentation previously. This is the deferred application, and there were 4 minor variances that were presented at the time, and our client is as being very responsible and very committed to their position or the presence in the community neighborhood. We've gone to great trouble to reduce most of the variances, only leaving one variance left. So we had indeed. I'm going to read a little statement from a letter. I'm going to be succinct here because it's late and everyone wants to wrap it up. But just wanted to point out that we're requesting the committee's support and backing in our application from the efforts that we've made in discussion with the property owner to reduce the number of minor variances from 4 down to 1. We are of the opinion that the design of the house is in size, proportion, massing, and detail would be appropriate building in this neighborhood for the overall community. We have received and submitted committee adjustment, numerous letters of support. There's been 8 letters of support for what the homeowner is proposing to do. We have reduced the building height, we have reduced the building lot coverage, and we have reduced the east side yard setback. The building is comprised of face brick with Indiana limestone. The building has character treatment elements of trim work and elements used around the windows. And although it may appear that the stonework looks to be relatively heavy, it's really going to be all white limestone, light limestone with white grout. The joinery there is just to indicate the modulation of the stone, and the modulation of the brick is to give it a form of human scale. There's also muntin bars that are indicated on both the upper and lower windows, which help provide a sense of human scale and proportion. And all the windows are aligned vertically so that there's an alignment. We've done trim work under the cornices, the trim for the chimney, and trim work around the windows and a portico entrance at the entrance of the doorway and surrounds at the garage. The building is what we feel is a character home and very traditional in many respects, and we think it's conducive for Oakville. There are many homes in the area that we have cited and seen some include that are of a very look to be very large from a facade point of view, which I know this is being questioned from some of the members and staff. There is a house next door at 324 Sandalwood, which is quite modern and contemporary. We feel that this home does provide a bit more character period and is and traditional in many respects. So we think it's really apropos for Oakville. I also want to point out that we are seeking relief for what would be a 1.4% over the approved residential floor area, GFA. 1.4% we feel is very minor in nature. We don't think it would have really any impact in terms of with the neighborhood. We feel it's still keeping with the general official plan and the general intent for the committee for the bylaw. And I also want to point out that we have realized that there were 3 properties nearby that had that were approved. One had a 37% requirement. It was approved for 2.4% over the allowable at 372 Stanfield Drive. There was another location of a property that was located at 349 Stanfield Drive, which had a 1.49% increase over the allowable 37%. So because we're 1.4, we feel it's modest. We don't think that 1.4% is something that you could actually notice with the naked eye. So we feel that this application, we request the city or the town would be able to consider this application acceptable, and that we're requesting that this variance for the 1.4% be waived. So I have nothing further to add at this point. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mount. Is there, I recognize that we do have 8 letters of support on hand. And I would like to see if the committee members have any questions of Mr. Malik at this time, or any items of clarification. Go ahead, Mr. Talowski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Malik, in the staff report, staff addressed that you have reduced the number of variances, but you chose not to address, I guess, their comments with respect to the mass and scale of the building. Can you explain to the committee why you have not addressed those concerns of staff?
Well, we reduced the setback, so the building is reduced with, you know, somewhat, and we'd have reduced the height of the roof line, the building, so the height, the massing of the building has in fact been reduced from what was previously presented. And as I said, I think design and architectural treatment can be a personal thing, and everyone is entitled to their opinion. And you know, you may like a certain style design where someone else may not, but as I stated in my earlier sort of remarks, that we're using materials that have a modulation with the brick and with the stone, which make it proportionally and give it more of a human scale and traditional look. So, and as I mentioned, the windows are all uniformly laid out and have the mountain bars and the treatment, which doesn't make the building as a whole appear to be massive and disproportionate. I think it has a proportion. I think it has a rhythm. I think it's architecturally pleasing. I've done a lot of period homes as an architect for 38 years. It's maybe a matter of choice, but I feel that this house would be a very apropos and very conducive for the neighborhood. It does have a proportion. It does have a massing. I feel that is being respectful, mindful, and as I said, we have reduced the size of the house from what was in the previous submission. So it does bring it down marginally as well.
Thank you.
Any further questions or comments or items of clarification? Has anyone called with interest for this application, Madam Secretary Treasurer?
Madam Chair, there have been no calls and no one has their hand up.
Very well, thank you very much. Okay, if there are no questions or interest from neighbors, we can take the matter into committee. Who would like to move a motion? Go ahead, Mr. Dickey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Although I agree that the residential floor area is minor in nature, the exterior design, in my opinion, does not meet the design standards of the official plan, and it's not, in my opinion, a desirable development as a result. This is based on my review of the owner's applications, the site plan, building elevations, my site visit, presentation by the owner's consultant, and of course, particularly the planning staff report, which I agree with. Therefore, I make a motion that the application as applied for be denied. Thank you.
Am I at liberty to ask a question? Sorry, not.
No, we're in committee now, Mr.
Okay.
Malik.
Thank you.
Sorry, I was muted there. Is there a discussion on this recommendation? Okay, I see none. All those in support of the motion to deny? Okay. All those opposed? The application has been denied. Yeah, unfortunately, and thank you and have a good night.
I don't think that's fair. I don't understand what is the basis for not meeting with the official plan. I feel the response is rather subjective with no justification as to why it doesn't support. And I don't think it's fair when there was only a 1.4% overage of allowable when we've been working with choice quality materials. There's homes in the area that are constructed with stucco and siding, which I think are inferior. I don't understand how homes can be built using those materials and also disproportionate to what I think with the character for Oakville. I'm very disappointed.
And those comments are on record, and you are entitled to your opinion, and you do have a recourse as an applicant for appeal if you so choose. I believe Mr. Dickey was straightforward in terms of the design, and in terms of it being just one large section that's built without any breakdowns and to break out the massing, and the committee supported him. So that's all I have to say. Once again, have a good evening. Next matter on our agenda. This was the last matter on our agenda, correct? Yeah, it is. So the confirmation of minutes for August 7th, who would like to move that motion? Thank you, Mr. Dickey. Motion to adjourn. Mr. Hardcastle, thank you. Madam Secretary Treasurer, please let us know when we're offline.